And one thing that happens now is the things that people quote unquote see are the consumables, not the assets. And we'll even talk about our assets in a way, unintentionally, this is an enormously honest person, but just naturally, because that biological need to shake our peacock feathers, they don't disclose the downside of those transactions. Hello and welcome to the first Your Business, Your Wealth live stream episode. Technically, we did a live stream last week. That was just a test. We're hoping that this week is going to work that much better. And I am joined, as always, with great gratitude and an enormous amount of friendship, the guy who you've heard me to say, shirt is often blue, but attitude never is, Cory Shepard.
Well, and as they say, this is not a test. Yes, I'm excited to be here for our first live stream, and thank you for. I'm sure you stayed up all night, and for Paul staying up all night, that means till 9:30, thinking up my introduction for this morning.
Exactly right. Actually, last night got in bed by about 8:45, just getting ready for this. But Cory, maybe just while I get a chance to sip some coffee, which is absolutely necessary, I finish this cup before we're done with the live stream. Why don't you introduce our episode today?
So today we're talking about financial sacred cows. And I love our title is Your Financial Sacred Cows Could Be Milking You. Now, sacred cow is really just an idea that bears no scrutiny or pushback. It's just embedded so deep into our cultural mindset that we take it for granted. We don't even think about it. Like, this must be the way, and they can harm us in our financial life. And we're going to take a look at a few of the big ones today. And I know, Paul, that this is the first one is one that you get pretty chomped at the bit about. So
I do.
I'll let you
And right before jumping on the first one, let me just give you guys a high-level sketch of what we're going to cover in today's episode. Of course, this will be distributed via podcast. You guys are going to be able to see it again this coming week. We'll release it our regular schedule next Tuesday. So those of you who get a chance to watch live are just getting a special chance to see it recorded live. But here's our main topics. One, the sacred cow of maxing out the 401k as the first financial priority in somebody's life. Second is something that's incredibly tempting now as we see that stocks crashed earlier this year and some of them made a meteoric comeback, and all the new conversation around stock picking as a strategy, which in and of itself, it's a tactic only, and a tactic that doesn't work very often. Then we're going to talk a little bit about lifestyle, and Cory's got some unique stories to share of just that actual on-the-ground spending decisions and how you can control that with mindset rather than necessarily just budget. And then the idea of paying your house off slowly over time through the means of additional down payments or making extra payments at home. Those are the four big sacred cows that may be milking you that we're going to put on the chopping block and hopefully slaughter for you today. So Cory doesn't always like my very visual metaphors. So let's talk first about don't love them. Doesn't hate him enough, but we didn't give him a mute button for me for the live stream.
No, I said no. I love that one.
That was not a bad one. Okay, good. See, I got that past Cory, so I'll push the line a little later. So they say it's going to help you retire, but one of the easiest things to think about that's all too often not talked about is that 401ks were a replacement to a true pension. And a real pension where somebody say was going to replace 75% of your income meant that they had to set aside a significant chunk of your earnings every year into a fund that would fund that pension. And we don't hear about it much anymore because so many companies have dispatched of their pension plans. We don't hear things like I heard often in the financial news when I was early in my career in the late 90s and early 2000s, when they would say things like, oh, so-and-so had lower earnings because they had to top off an underfunded pension. Now, the reason we don't hear that anymore is not because they're not difficult to fund. There just aren't that many of them anymore. And the 401k was initially supposed to be a supplement on top of those pensions, but slowly over time became a less expensive alternative for employers to be able to allow individuals to control their fate a little more and fund that 401k. Now, why is it that the 401k is such a, I would say like a juggernaut or so revered by every financial news person that you talk to, every financial book you read? Anytime you hear somebody talking on TV, it is max out your 401k first priority. Now, first, one of the things that you want to think about is having other things handled first, having an appropriate amount of life and disability insurance, having an emergency fund, making sure that something in the next 3 months doesn't take you out while you're setting aside money for the next 30 years. So that's first. And we'll just touch on that as a small point, but there are other things that should get handled before you max out your 401k.
Another really easy one about the news media is they're not doing the calculation for you. So
Amen.
When the legislation started, what was it, early 90s that the legislation became opt out for your 401k, I think.
Oh,
something,
yeah.
something like that.
Yep.
Right. So now when you join a big employer, it used to be that you had to go actively sign up. Now you have to actively opt out, or else they'll start putting some amount of money in for you. So it's just the flow of our culture. So that news media, it's very easy for them to just jump on the mindset and say the things that people like and optimize the clicks and get people to watch. Like, it could be as simple as that from the news media standpoint.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think now is probably a better time than ever that we find out that media companies only broadcast the material that their audience already wants to hear. And you can see that across the political landscape, that publications that say something that's significantly contrary to what their audience believes is true will get blown up by that audience. It's no different in the financial media. If Motley Fool tomorrow wrote an article that was thorough, that took deep thought and recommended to people exactly how they should make the recommendations, and that all the rest of the articles on Motley Fool, that thing would get ratioed the second they put it out on social media. So, but when we watch, here's what we're not thinking about and what nobody's talking about when they say the first thing you do is your 401k. They don't talk about the little things that should be done first, number one. Number two, they don't talk about that, geez, when you're 28 or 32 years old and you have your first child and you have that deduction, plus you have a mortgage deduction, plus you and your spouse are making far less money in your early 30s than you are going to make by the time you're in your mid 40s and mid 50s. And so even if you retire on a portion of your income that you made in your mid 50s, you'll still be in a higher tax rate, even if tax rates don't change when you get into your old age. Meaning, we're doing reverse tax planning. Maybe you're taking money out of a 15% bracket right now. You're getting no tax savings. And if you guys want to go deeper into this, we did a pretty thorough episode on the 401k. That was
161.
161. Thank you, Mr. Shepard.
Yep.
So when you're trying to max out that 401k, you might be taking it out of a low bracket, say at 15%, and taking it out at a high bracket, say 32. That's what you refer to as reverse tax planning in the favor of the IRS.
Right.
And what many people don't realize is that they used to have a surtax. So when we had as low as a 28% top bracket in this country, they turned up this success tax on the 401ks, allowing them to charge an extra 15% if you had over a certain amount of assets or a certain amount of income. Everybody stopped talking about that because we haven't been in significantly lower rates than when people put things in, but that's still in the code. It's just that Congress currently has it set to 0. So they could turn that back up, which kind of leads us to a little conversation I've been wanting to have for some time. And that is the kind of damage done by what I would largely refer to as financial entertainers. So let me explain what I mean by a financial entertainer. It is a person who publishes content and their revenue model is from advertisers, not from the people listening. From advertisers, not from people listening, which means you, when you're watching someone like Dave Ramsey, you're the product that's being sold to the Ramsey advertisers. You're the product going in and saying, yes, I'd like to find a Dave Ramsey professional. And they're selling that for $40 a lead to financial advisors and insurance folks across the country. Sometimes it's 40, sometimes it's 20, but the thing is, you're the product your viewership, and that's how we define a financial entertainer. Some of the things being said on that might be exactly right. Some of them could be vastly wrong. But even if they're exactly right for somebody, what are the odds they're right for us? And that's going to kind of make my last point on why we want to be cautious about financial entertainers. Because someone like Dave Ramsey openly says the best thing you could do is get the money into that 401k and grow your assets with no conversation about the government being able to change tax rates on you later and therefore cause you to forfeit a significant amount of your money. Just imagine putting it in at 30, but then having to take it out at a 50% tax rate, or God forbid you move to a state with a worse tax regime in your old age, because maybe that's where your grandkids are. And one example of that it's very specific only to the tools that he's very, I would say, zealously supported, like the 401k, but the second something new comes out, in this case, the PPP, for those of you who are business owners who've listened to Dave Ramsey at all, he has gone out and said, well, the government could change the rules on you. Maybe they won't forgive it. And he told tens of thousands of business owners who listened to his show they should take no PPP because the government might change the rules on you. Not take the PPP because the government needs to compensate you for shutting you down. And if you don't need it, you could pay it back. No, he said, absolutely don't take it. Don't apply for it. Pay yourself less. Pay yourself zero before you lay off a single employee. And while that sounds very populist and very good, it is tremendously financially damaging, no different than looking at your 401k as the primary salvation of your retirement plan. I'll breathe now, Cory.
You're getting fired up when you're live.
You got to be careful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you just listen, what he says is basically PPP, always bad. 401k, always good. Debt, always bad. Pay down your mortgage as fast as possible, always good. That can't be right for everybody listening. It just can't. And so you automatically have to think, is this right for me? And there's a good chance that it's not. And from the 401k standpoint, we talk about our tax rates going up over time. Or I like to tell a young doctor just coming out of school, would you hope to be in the highest tax bracket you're ever going to be in your life right now, or the lowest? And they're like, oh yeah, I hope I make more money over time. And when the 401k first started, we were at some of the highest tax rates we've ever been in our history. And now we're back down near the lower end of the spectrum since between World War I and World War II. So just the odds are that they may go up in the future.
Yep. Just simple mean reversion would have them need to go up at some point.
Right.
And keeping in mind, while we're talking about 401k, I'm a bit of a political nerd and junkie. This is the first time I've ever seen one entire party on the debate stage with more people on the debate stage than I've ever seen in my life. And they couldn't even fit them all on. They had to leave some people on the ticket off. Yet every single one of them said they're going to raise taxes. Never seen that before. There's always someone on there that's trying to be an outlier and saying, no, we're going to do something else instead. That wasn't the case. There is an overwhelming kind of zeitgeist of go ahead and increase taxes on those who we deem wealthy, which may not be what would mean financial security or definite financial independence for you. It just means enough other people think you're wealthy that they're willing to vote a share of your pocketbook, or more importantly, your retirement plans in the 401k. Cory, since you talked a little bit about the house, do you want to take the house next in paying your mortgage off slowly over time with additional payments?
Let's do it. First thing I would like to say about this is we are huge fans of having a paid off house. I just met with a client yesterday that told me, oh, we just got news from the bank, made our last payment on the mortgage. And I almost cried. Like, it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. And also I love a efficiently mortgaged house.
Yes.
That lets you do other things on your balance sheet, that uses the incredibly low interest rates that we're at right now. And if you do it inside of a, efficient spending plan for your balance sheet, the really dangerous place is a somewhere in the middle strategy that takes the strategy and puts it on the bank's balance sheet quicker versus yours. That's the big context for this one. Paid off houses, great. But let's talk about how to get there.
Well, and I think you guys can go into episode 184 and be able to see more on the specific math of it. But if you just think of it conceptually with us for a moment, just picture buying a house. And when you first buy the house, you put down 20%. We'll just use $1 million home as an example. You've got an $800,000 mortgage, which means the bank can have their investment secure even if the property value drops by 20%. Even if it's not overall property values, but something specific happens to your house that drops at 20%. They're protected. And then let's say we just pay off a little more, either with chunks toward our mortgage or we've just made additional payments, we pay that debt down to $600,000. Now that's $200,000 we do not have somewhere else on our balance sheet. We are technically avoiding some interest, but our payments haven't changed at all. And in fact, we've gotten closer to being able to be foreclosed on in 90 days in many states, except for in the COVID environment. But now the bank is more secure than they were before, and by definition, you're less so. Because if that $200,000 was somewhere else on your balance sheet, you would have no problem making your mortgage payment. If you had just set it aside somewhere else, frankly, even something quite volatile would be better off than the volatility of your home mortgage, because you can't get the money unless you requalify. And if you're like some people are right now, where their business is taking a hit, their job is taking a hit, you may not be able to go out and reapply right now because you don't have the income like you once did.
And banks are not like some of these auto insurance companies that now have accident forgiveness and vanishing deductibles. Like, the more early payments you make to the bank does not build up some credit of you get to miss a few down the road. Make 2 years of extra, double the mortgage payment that they're asking for, and then try missing one and see what kind of letter that you get.
Yeah.
Exactly the same letter as if you had not any.
That's exactly right. Not an experiment that Cory's recommending that Sound Financial Group approves of you doing.
No.
But the thought experiment is super strong, and I think you're exactly right. You're just going to get the same letter, except the more equity you have, the more aggressive they'll be taking your home. That is no question, because they know they're that much more secure.
In all sincerity, in 2008, in the mortgage crisis, when a lot of people were in trouble around paying for the home, you might remember it was people that had the biggest mortgages relative to the value of their home that were getting the most help from the banks. And it's because if you think about who's the bigger client, someone, $1 million house with an $800,000 mortgage or $100,000 mortgage, the 800, you're the high roller client.
Yep.
They're going to take care of you more and work with you more because they would rather you pay than have to deal with that house. They don't want to be in the real estate business.
Yep. Well said. Well said. So let's talk a little bit about stock picking.
Yeah.
And Cory, I have a story from this weekend that I'm going to have to just keep enormously vague, okay, to be able to make sure I protect the guilty. So
now I'm nervous. Folks, he has not run this one by me, so we're going to find out together.
Best of luck to all of us.
Brave new world. Yeah, best of luck to all.
So somebody comes up to me and they say, hey, I've got significant gains in this portfolio. I've really done good on this particular segment of stocks in this environment. And this is someone who, I kid you not, just didn't have hardly anything that they could do or use for their financial future just months ago. I think there was some inheritance or something like that came in, and they immediately went into stock picking and trading. So as we're chatting and I hear about these gains and trying to help them understand how they might be able to offset the gains or how they could make a charitable gift to help with them. And after we finished the conversation, they walked off, but another professional was in the same environment with me. And what he brought up was, well, did they tell you about all the losses? And I said, what do you mean? They said, oh, not every one they did worked out that well. They are not going to have that much taxes to pay. Now, we've told you guys this over and over and over again, that the person that's at the party who says, man, I crushed it on Tesla, they don't tell you that they took a bath on Fisker. They say, man, I crushed it with Walmart and Amazon on their stock holdings, but they forgot to tell you about the Kmart or the Ross or whatever else they invested in that didn't work out. It doesn't occur to people, even when they're like this person was trying to get very specific advice of what to do about a very large tax bill. And even in that moment, when they know enough about finance to know that what's really going to impact them is the net gain after their losses, and yet they don't even bring it up, because we all have this innate sense of needing to look good. You know, we've talked about it in the past that we all have these peacock feathers that we flap around. And we used to be able to do that because the stuff that we owned and invested in were the same things people could see. Go to the 1800s. If I had 10,000 head of cattle and you could see them all up on the hillside outside of town, you knew I was a pretty well-to-do cattle rancher. If Cory owned the saloon in the next 3 towns, you knew he had some business going. If Jordan, our video engineer, who I hope is still successfully live streaming this, if he owned the printing press in the next 2 towns, you would know he was a person of means, or that he had 300 acres outside of town. Like, you knew, because the assets were the same as what people could see. And one thing that happens now is the things that people, quote unquote, see are the consumables, not the assets. And we'll even talk about our assets in a way, unintentionally. This is an enormously honest person, but just naturally, because that biological need to shake our peacock feathers, they don't disclose the downside of those transactions. So that's one that right now, probably more than ever, you will have people said, I bought X because I knew there's no way that X was going out of business due to COVID. And sure enough, that stock has popped back up. But the question is, how many times can you do that? Number one. And number two, it doesn't even add up to that much money usually. If what you want to do is continue a $400,000 a year income in your old age, you're going to need $10 million capital at work. So even if you have a $100,000 win from a stock, which is going to be short-term capital gains, which you're likely going to only keep 65,000 of, unless you have some losses. So, but then you don't even have the full 100,000. That's right.
Well, then you.
So to that point, it's like, it's like, okay, I can put that on the big pile of money I need later, but it doesn't solve in any predictable way the future we're working toward. And this is why you've heard us in the Illusions of Investing. You can go to episode 183 for that. It's a good one to watch on YouTube instead of the podcast because it will give you the visuals. But even the professionals, if you take the top 25% of asset managers in any given 5-year period and then watch them for another 5 years, it's something like the low 20s, 22, 23% that even beat their index the following 5 years after they crushed it and they were in the top 25% of all asset managers the prior 5 years. That's the thing we're not told, is even the pros can't do it. And this will be my last point on this, Cory, and then we're going to get to lifestyle and wrap this episode.
I got one thing I got to say about it too.
All right, right on. So if you think about it as E-Trade and say big box financial retail, Morgan Stanley, Edward Jones, all that, they act publicly. They act publicly as if they're in different spaces, but they're not. You see, big box financial retail is saying, you can't do it, but we hire these amazing professionals who are going to be able to pick stocks on your behalf and build a portfolio. Those are asset managers. On the other side, E-Trade says, you can do it. You don't need those expensive professionals. You know what they're both saying? Someone can stock pick. And that's the myth they're selling to us. Now, we got our first chat in. I got to say something about this. Alan says, I do the opposite on YouTube. When people ask me for stock advice, I tell them I received a 6-figure education in both real estate and stocks in 2008. So you're best to do the opposite of what I do. Alan, that is such a good point. Thank you for that chat. I can't wait to have more of our clients in here chatting with us and us getting to talk to you specifically right during that. So on our first, thank you, Alan, for sending that in. We can't wait to recognize more of you. Go ahead and fire up that chat panel. Cory.
That's so great. Well, stock picking is also not just picking individual stocks, but picking individual sectors or asset classes. And that's what a lot of managers or folks do. And so I read an article about like when you grew up and what was going on around you at the time impacted a lot of what you thought about the best place to invest. And folks, that were doing a lot of their investing in the 70s, bond prices were super high, but interest rates were so high then that you could nearly buy CDs and get everything done in your life that you needed to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's been, the last 10 years has been the S&P 500. Like, it's really easy to think this is just the way it is and going to be going on forever and forever. And that's just not the case. And, a lot of folks have said like, oh, my portfolio has been doing pretty good for the last 10 years. And it's like, yeah, it's been hard not to do well. Like, you have to really try hard to not do well, just picking the S&P 500. But we're measuring for the next 30 years of your life.
And if you measure the S&P 500 not from this decade, but the prior, you had all of zero return, nothing. You had no return whatsoever in the S&P 500, even adjusted for dividends for the first 10 years of the decade. They call it the lost decade. And it is lost because people have stopped talking about it. Now they're like, look at S&P 500, it's going to the moon and I'm riding along. Now, it should be, parts of the S&P 500 should absolutely be in every academically allocated, globally diversified portfolio. But what we don't want to do is bank on any single asset class, because that's just market timing and stock picking in disguise. Cory, you know what we didn't do, Cory, today, before we hit our next topic? We totally forgot room for a commercial. So I'll do the commercial this time. No, I think we do it. Yeah, we're doing a commercial.
Okay. Wait, but do we do like the graphic where it's like I
don't know if Jordan could even do that right now, but he's shaking his head furiously no, like a bobblehead that's in an earthquake. So I don't think we can do it. But here, I just want to say to all of you that if you're hearing this or first time experiencing our content, like, just reach out. You can email us at info@sfgwa.com. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, search at Ask Paul Adams. Or you can find us at Your Business, Your Wealth. But do reach out if this is triggering questions or thinking, or we just slaughtered one of your sacred cows and you're like, I'm going to go listen to that episode. I want you to take it with that degree of skepticism, but take it seriously. Get in communication with us. We'd love to come alongside you and see if we could be of help. We will not make you an offer if we do not think it's ethical for you to take the money or time necessary to work with us, because what we want is people that are super happy with their engagements with us. And the way that we do that is we have clients apply. We'd encourage you to do so. And even if we don't make you an offer, we will give you at no cost some financial triage to set you up best you can for 2021 with items that you can complete between now and then. Okay, Cory.
Great commercial. Love it. Also, for next time we live stream, I think we need a shave cam on Jordan. And with a button that you and I can press. It turns red when it turns on, so he knows when he's on camera, but he just won't know when it's going to happen. So we could just, I like
that. Like when he's shaking his head right now, we could just have that on camera.
Yeah,
I like that. I think,
and since I can't see him, I think I should have the button, because then it'd be really fun.
I think that makes a lot of sense. But I just want our audience to notice, Cory said when we do it next time, which means I didn't blow it. So, Cory, why don't you bring us home?
No.
And if we don't do another one, it's because Cory messed up this last part.
We're also not done yet. Let's talk about buying baby gear, which, speaking of, I can hear, I kind of remember this vaguely now. We were given a gift of a nice rocking chair for the baby room, and I think that's getting delivered right now. I can hear some banging around. Around in case you get that through my mic.
Is it a glider or an actual rocking chair?
Yeah, I'm sure.
You don't know. Well, I just say Kubo is going to be a very nervous dog if it's a rocking chair.
Well, I know that I don't know actually which one we got, so we will see.
We'll find out later.
Kubo's a nervous dog anyway, I think, with this baby coming. He's like, my world is going to get rocked. So you heard we got the first baby coming to the household, and we get to do the whole thing, which is gearing up. And I started doing stroller research. Now, we made a challenge to ourselves to buy as little as possible and buy as little new as possible, just because we realized that baby gear gets turned in and out. Kids use it for such a short amount of time. It's an area where there's really high quality, great condition stuff that just gets thrown away or in an attic or a basement, and it's great for the environment, and it doesn't hurt the balance sheet. And that's a win. You can do something good for the environment, good for the balance sheet at the same time.
Indeed.
So we started researching strollers. We thought that's one thing we ought to buy brand new. We ended up buying the car seat brand new because I don't know. You don't know.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. Because
feels good about that.
Feels a little safer.
Feels a little safer. But the stroller that this car seat just attaches into, Danielle found one used online for a fraction of the price. And I was shocked. You can spend as much on a stroller as a used car sometimes. It's crazy. Crazy. And so we pull up to Michael's park lot in suburban Chicago and do the exchange, kind of like a drug deal. And we got masks on and everything,
It does. It's like you're hiding your identity while transacting for a stroller. Did you hand him a nondescript envelope? Like
that's right. Well, the tongs and hand them right. And so we look at the stroller, and it's fine. And I mean, there's a couple little scratches in one spot that I noticed because I noticed those things, but I'm sure no one else will even notice. And 5 minutes or less, probably 3 minutes or less, cash is exchanged. It's in our back of our car, and we drive away. And I realized that I'm just not all that excited about the stroller that we just got. I've been researching and looking for the cool looking stroller, and this is going to be great. And I was just like, eh. And then I thought, maybe it's really good that I'm not excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if I was really excited about it, I would have just spent way more than I need to, because I was falling into that cultural mindset of you must look like this. Everything must be at this level for this baby. Like, our kid's going to get a great, Daniel pointed out to me, it's the 2 levels up of the model lines of the company we're looking at, just a year used. So we got for way less money an actual much nicer stroller than I was even intending to get. And so it's great. I guess that's a good thing. And so I realized what I'd inadvertently done is shielded myself from that reinforcement, kind of like what social media does to us, where the intermittent pings of those chemicals, that dopamine, saying, oh, you get that win. What are you getting your wins from? Probably it should be being excited that the baby just kicked, not the stroller that I just bought.
Well, and consider that just to give everybody some real numbers, what did you actually pay for the stroller, and what is the approximate cost of that model new?
Yeah. So, well, the one we were looking at was going to be about $350 plus, another 50 or 80 for the car seat attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got the one that was a model up, I don't know, another $50 or $100 more. And we paid $70 for one that was just, bought in 2018 and used for less than 1 year and then put in a closet.
And the thing that I think about, Cory, and this has probably already sort of occurred to our audience, but had you gone to a store, bought it new in a cardboard box with the plastic bags on it, and you get that
unboxing, I love unboxing things.
And they know that. They know that. Even when packaging was garbage, we loved opening them.
We talked about this. Apple has ruined the world for packaging.
That's right.
Everybody had to up their game when Apple started shipping iPhones in these artwork boxes. Yeah.
My aftermarket Nespresso pods now come in a really gorgeous little package instead of a tube. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that spending the extra money probably would have given you the dopamine hit. And I think what you're noticing and what our clients notice when they begin to look differently at lifestyle is that they're not getting the dopamine hit. And that's actually like a bit of a recovery process to go, okay, but I did good here. I mean, we did some research, we did all that, but I even noticed the difference between buying a new RV, which I did years ago because I was a big chicken and didn't think I'd be able to fix anything on an RV. Now I'm more confident. So we bought our second RV used. You know what I felt like I'd done? Even though it had everything that I wanted, I felt like I had finished a project. It wasn't that, it was like, okay, that's done. All right, I need to get it over and park it. Kristen wants to do some things on the inside, but it wasn't like this massively huge dopamine hit moment, even when buying a large ticket item. And I think part of that is that we've somehow gotten wired by, we used to call it Madison Avenue, but now we can just say social media. But we've now been ingrained that there is some special thing when we buy something new or when we spend without care. Like that is a virtue. And what we have the opportunity to do is the little things on lifestyle, like the reason why you might say, I can just put in a coffee pod when I get home. There's no sense of me stopping at Starbucks on my way home to spend $8 on a coffee. It's not to avoid the $8. That's where that book, The Latte Factor, goes totally wrong. In fact, it's a way to train ourselves in inconsequential environments for the consequential environment. Because if you know yourself someone to be someone who will drive past the Starbucks and not pay for that coffee and brew it at home, then you create a self-image that's also the person that doesn't pay full price for that stroller, who doesn't buy a brand new car when they get a new car. They find something that's gently used and they save tens of thousands of dollars. And as you get to know yourself this way, it changes everything, including, to what Cory said, that biological response to the dopamine. So I love that story, Cory.
We all think that getting a cool new thing is what the dopamine comes from, but I think you're right. We've trained ourselves that it's the spending the money that makes that dopamine go up. So if we could rewire that so that spending the money gave us the opposite feeling, but then we got the dopamine hit from the thing, and then we only buy something when the two balance out enough to be positive to the dopamine for the negative of spending that money.
Exactly.
And that's what economists used to say we did in just a invisible hand, Adam Smith kind of economic system. But now we're realizing that these social and behavioral factors are coming in and messing with all that. So
indeed.
Anyway,
well,
for all of you that are having kiddos or buying something, like, just, if someone's pressuring you to buy something super expensive for no other reason than it's expensive, just send them a link to this podcast. You can give them my email. I'll have a chat with them. We'll help you out.
Yeah. And one, thank you. I want to thank Jordan. Jordan did all the work to figure out how we could live stream to multiple platforms. We've got another comment here from Alan. That's one of the few positives this year, is that it got us back to the frugality that we had when we were starting out. And I think that's such a great point, Alan. It may be a little bit like a doctor wanting to straighten out our leg and we wear a brace for a little bit. For some of us, we've been wearing a spending brace because we can't go out to dinner with a large family like we used to. We can't take the vacations we used to. We can't do those things. But we're finding an enormous amount of joy in those family connections, enormous amount of joy in perhaps turning off the devices and playing a board game, an enormous amount of joy from being smarter with our money. And like I had people come up to me at church this weekend and say, I feel like I've got more money than I've ever had before, and I didn't get a pay raise. That is a little bit of the environment getting a chance to reveal the abundance that we have, and that how much we might forfeit that abundance with some of these sacred cows unknowingly, putting us in the position that those cows are milking us instead of the other way around. So thank you again, Cory, my good friend, my business partner, and an incredibly talented show host, to Jordan, to our entire team at Sound Financial Group. And as always,
Paul, before you...
Yeah, I'm ready.
Pushing us to make this happen. It wouldn't have happened without you, and thanks for just not making me too nervous along the way. I really appreciate it.
Next live episode, everybody, we will have Cory like a cat on a hot tin roof. I'm going to work on extra material. And with that, we hope that this episode and all episodes have been a contribution to you being able to design and build a good. I'm so glad you could tune in and watch that video. I want to remind you to subscribe. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you can get the latest piece of financial knowledge we release. And don't forget, go to Amazon, get a copy of Sound Financial Advice. Why? Because it'll make you better looking and smarter.